Hello, everybody, and welcome to Testy Tuesday. Yes, that day when we test your unbelievable Bible knowledge and one that you can share with your friends and just kind of show off. Well, don't do that, okay? Actually, just want to see how much you remember from maybe your Sunday school days, or were you sleeping through the sermon and you didn't hear it? All right, you're going to hear it now. I mentioned this in my recording yesterday. This would be the theme of Testy Tuesday. It's that day when the Israelites, as they were wandering through the wilderness, they haven't quite made it into the promised land yet. Remember, they're being led by Moses, the Exodus event through the Red Sea, and now they're journeying toward the promised land. And it's taken them a long time because they're just so unfaithful. And this is one of those instances where they were terribly unfaithful. They come to Moses one day and they say, Moses, we're so sick and tired of this food that we have to eat. It's just manna, 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 manna this, manna that, manna. How many different ways can you fix manna? And you just finally get sick of it. Now, God had provided manna in the wilderness for the people because it was tough to gather things together to eat. So every morning there it would be, laying on the ground, pick up enough to eat for that day. Next morning there's more on the ground, pick it up. He was feeding them. It was his gracious hand that did it. But even then, they griped and they complained. And they were griping so much to Moses about it that God looked down and said, hey, that's it. I'm so fed up with these people. And he sent a bunch of, well, it's translated two different ways: fiery snakes or poisonous snakes. Either way, hey, you get bit by one of these babies, you get real sick, probably burn up with a fever, hence fiery, and then you die. And the people are crying out to Moses, save us, pray to God. And Moses prayed to God, and God told Moses, okay, this is what you do. You put this on a pole, lift it up, and whoever gets bit by one of those snakes, all they have to do is look at it and they'll be healed. What is it that Moses put up on that pole? Are you ready? Number one, was it the image of a snake? Number two, was it the image of a seraphim? Number three, was it a cross? Or number four, was it a Super Bowl trophy that the Buffalo Bills would never ever win? Okay, that's your four choices there. What? You didn't like that last one? Okay. It's one of the Super Bowl trophies that the Pittsburgh Steelers did win. You don't like that one either, some of you? Okay, let's just skip that. Pick one of the first three. Was it a snake? Was it a seraphim? Or was it a cross? Time is up. You all had the right answer, didn't you? You all said seraphim, didn't you? What? You don't believe me? Well, that is the actual Greek word, is seraphim. But here's the idea behind all that. Seraphim often was also translated as snake. And yes, there were and there are plenty of poisonous snakes out there in that wilderness area in the Middle East. Lots of them. In fact, when people were going out to do their thing, to do archaeological digs and stuff like that, they were running into them all over the place. So it's a real problem. They're a real pest. But the seraphims are also what guarded the Ark of the Covenant. There was images of those guarding the Ark of the Covenant. And Isaiah has all those images of fiery seraphims, right? All right. Interesting. Just a little thing to keep in your back pocket. But we're going to call them snakes, serpents. Bite the people, they would die. The whole gist of the story is God provided a way out. God provides a way out, and that way out was, look upon this snake and you will live. But there's a couple of interesting things about this. It's a story that it's just kind of stuck in there in Numbers 21. Not a whole big deal is made about it in the Old Testament, but there's a big deal made about it once you get into the New Testament, into the Gospel of John, which is our gospel reading for today, or this coming Sunday, which is why we have this passage from Numbers popping up for us. Yes, even as Moses lifted up the bronze serpent in the wilderness, so shall the Son of Man be lifted up. When we get into talking about that later this week, there's some more interesting stuff we're going to find out. It's more than just lifting up an image. Oh, it's a whole lot more. Let's get back to what we have right here in the Old Testament reading. What's interesting is after the people, and we won't see this until later in the Old Testament, after the people got back made it into the Promised Land, did their conquests of the Promised Land, then they had their series of kings, David, who started, and Solomon, who finished building the temple. After that, things were starting to deteriorate. The whole kingdom was split into two, north versus south, Israel versus Judah. And there was a lot of really lousy, crummy kings. A lot of them who allowed the pagan worship practices that were still there in that region amongst some of the indigenous people, allowed them to take place, and it was bad news. But there was one king who came along. His name was Hezekiah. We had a dog named Hezekiah at one time, and he was an awesome dog, to be honest with you. He was just awesome. But he was a good dog, and Hezekiah was a good king. And he was faithful to God, destroyed a lot of the places where it's believed child sacrifice was taking place, the high places. But there was one thing that previous to this, his reign had kind of crept into the picture too. All of a sudden, on the temple, there's this serpent, a bronze serpent. It probably started out to be celebrated. It was above one of the entranceways. It probably was there to start out as a remembrance to the people of their wilderness wanderings, how they were unfaithful. And in that moment, God provided a way out for them, and God saved them by looking at the bronze serpent. But there was a big problem. See, a serpent was a fertility god in the Canaanite religions. And there were images of serpents everywhere. When Hezekiah saw that, he said, hey, you know what? That's diverting our attention from the one true God, Yahweh, off onto these other things. Down it comes. He took it down and he smashed it to bits. And that's the end of that. Some people think that was the original bronze serpent that Moses lifted up that made its way into the Promised Land. Who knows? It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is, when Hezekiah saw it as an idol, so to speak, something that was keeping them from worshiping the one true God, and instead their imaginations were wandering off to, hey, maybe we'll just hedge all our bets and worship this God too, the serpent god of the Canaanites. He said, enough's enough, and he got rid of it. Keep that in your back pocket too, and just share that little story with someone someday, all right? Just kind of a fun thing to know about the serpent in the wilderness. But be watching later this week as we talk about, even as Moses lifted up that serpent, so the Son of Man shall be lifted up. God's blessings be with you, and enjoy the big warm-up this week.